Let's get right into it. Okay. Okay. See behind the scenes. Whoop. Did you guys see that? Whoops. All right. So time management, a very pressing subject as any other, especially at the start of the semester. It can be kind of difficult to kind of shake off the summer, kind of get into new routines, um, and just find out, what really works for you as a student because, your classes are different. You might have a completely different schedule. You were mainly maybe mainly taking, Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes last semester, and now you're taking Tuesday, Thursday, or whatever it is, or you're taking night classes now. So it can be hard to find time to study, sleep, especially, take time for yourself and really, just be a successful student throughout the semester. And it's a skill that you're not completely um, an expert at the first time you do it. It takes time to build these habits. So that's what we're going to delve into today. So it's really a balancing act. So, you know, you might go through the motions of, oh, I have some downtime, so I would like to go to events, hang out with friends, maybe go to a new hangout spot, whether that's a restaurant or, maybe a new game place opened up but you have your responsibilities of assignments, quizzes, tests, papers, labs, and work on top of that, like if you do work. And so you ask yourself, when am I going to sleep? When am I going to eat? When am I going to exercise? When am I going to socialize? Because you do have to tick these boxes off before you completely burn yourself out.
Dan,
And
I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're still just seeing like your program, not the slideshow. So
oh,
you might just
really?
want to see how you're sharing. Yeah.
Okay, my apologies.
No, no worries. And we could see the slides. They just weren't big. We couldn't see your presentation.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me do entire screen. I'll do that.
Nope. Now I see myself. There you go. You did it.
There we go. Okay, so sorry about that. Um, so as I was saying, you kind of have to tick these boxes to avoid burnout because that's not what we want. We want to feel like we're steadily coasting along, and that we're not, you know, overexerting ourselves, but also keeping ourselves challenged and you know, making headway with our classes and that sort of thing. So, order versus disorder. Um, Order obviously is a nice balance of your time, being on time, being able to be resilient in how you face things, and then having ample free time. Whereas disorder can lead to stress, anxiety, late or missed assignments, and getting off schedule. And a lot of times with disorder, these things kind of stack up on top of each other, and it can get very daunting and it can feel like, you're not climbing out of this, but it's not, the end all. There is steps that you can take, little by little to have a happy medium of order and disorder because not everything is going to be all completely one or the other. There are going to be times where you do have a nice balance, and there are going to be times, especially during um, finals week or midterms, or you got a lot of tests on one day where it is going to be a little stressful. But if you have the skills to, manage your time well, it's going to be less stressful. Um, so let's talk about procrastination versus laziness. Um, Procrastination, by definition, is engaging in an alternative task that demands time, attention, and effort as a way to sidestep essential work. So that could be like, oh, I'm not doing my homework, I'm cleaning, so in theory, this is kind of, an effective way of effective use of my time, or I'm organizing something, or I'm working on a craft. Whereas on the flip side, laziness is dodging crucial tasks by being idle or engaging in trivial activities that offer minimal long-term benefit. And we see this with sleeping, like excessively, watching TV, playing video games, and just, being on your phone. Anything really to kind of avoid what you need to be working on. Um, and so we ask ourselves, why do we procrastinate? Why is this a thing that a lot of us do? Because, I mean, we're human. Of course, we get overwhelmed, or we just get bored, or we get, a multitude of things that can make us feel or make us procrastinate. And so a big one is self-doubt. You know, um, Students who are, chronic or severe procrastinators, really need to understand like the roots of it. So self-doubt, psychologists now attribute most procrastination to anticipation and protection from potential negative emotions associated with carrying out the work. So, we might not feel like we understand the content well enough to um, really delve into it deep enough and to understand it. Or we might have too much going on our mind. Maybe you're going through a breakup, or there's like a sick relative, or having problems with friends, or whatever it is. So there's a lot of factors at play. Um, you know, so how do we overcome procrastination? And it's easier said than done. But a few key tips is to identify really when we're procrastinating. So like really self-assess and be like, okay, I'm avoiding what I'm doing. So how can I redirect myself to what I'm supposed to be doing? And really try to encourage yourself with positive self-talk, because really it's like this inner narrative and inner mantras that we tell ourselves that really have a massive effect on how we behave and how we feel about ourselves. And so even if I like to use the term uh, fake it till you make it. And so, even if you don't really feel positive, even just saying the words and kind of just reinforcing that, that like, okay, I'm adequate. I can do this. I'm smart. I'm completely capable of doing this. Little by little, you're going to start believing that, and that makes a world of a difference. Not just in academics, but you can apply that to any other aspect of your life. Um, and another key tip is to divide big projects into smaller, more manageable steps. So rather than looking at this, massive, you know, lab or whatever, you just go through and you're like, okay, this is the, maybe go through the procedure and you're like, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this. And then it's like it's like a sprint versus like a marathon. If you sprint through it, you're like, that's a lot of energy, that's a lot to really um, compensate for. But a marathon is more like slow, and it's like not slow, but like it's more manageable because you're pacing yourself, you're really going through it. It's more manageable, even though it's like 26.2 miles. It is, more manageable when you have like the necessary steps that you're taking. And so you really have to begin with like the simplest aspects of these challenging tasks, because once you get those things out of the way, once you like if you were to do the big things first and you're like, oh my gosh, that was so much of my uh, mental capacity that I just spent doing this massive thing, and now I got to focus on these little things. And sometimes it's the little things that really can detract from your grade, whether it's like you're not citing well enough, or you don't cite, or you know, grammar errors, or you know, whatever it is. So it's good to start with like the simplest parts, so that when you ramp up to like the bigger parts, it's like, okay, once I finish this, it's completely done, you know. And you really have to acknowledge that learning and academic work can really be tough sometimes, you know. And that's not just like, it kind of goes back to the self-talk part. It's like, it's not just tough for me, you know. It's tough for like everybody, because this is objectively a hard class that we're taking, you know, whether it's like organic chemistry, or if it's, you know, linear algebra, or if it's one of the, you know, any class, no matter what, you know, how far along you are, it is objectively tough. So, and it's good to acknowledge that, because it's like, yeah, what I'm doing is tough, so let's cruise on through, and kind of understand that what you're doing holds a lot of importance. You know, you're doing each of these classes to get to the end point, which is graduation. And so it's good to really incorporate rewards for completing these certain things that are, you know, certain milestones. If you got a good grade, or even just completing something, because, you know, everyone's best, you know, looks different, you know. So it's really good to be nice to yourself and really incorporate certain things that be like, yes, I'm being nice to myself. This is really hard stuff. So we're just gonna, you know, I'm just gonna have a little treat, you know, here and there, you know, or in some cases for me, it's like every day, but you know, um, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's tough. So it's good to reward yourself for doing tough things. Um, so when we get into this thing called like managing your attention, right? So new research says that time management should really be thought of as attention management. And when we sit down to work on a project, our challenge is to focus our attention on the work. And so when we work, we're fully engaged. You know, like the other night, for example, I was doing some calculus homework, and I had like a podcast sitting like on my phone to the left of me, and I was not fully engaged, and I wasn't understanding the concepts. And I'm like, what am I doing here? So I turned it off, and then as soon as I was working on it for like 20, 30 minutes more, I'm like, okay, I shouldn't have just have to redo that entire problem, but we learn as we go. You know, not everyone has, you know, skills front, you know, front end to know all these things. So a lot of times, you know, you kind of work through it. So to improve your concentration, we should not only consider what we need to do, but also reflect on like the purpose behind it, you know. So rather than, you know, just regurgitating information, it's like, well, why is this relevant? Why is this um, topic, you know, coming up now when it came up 2 chapters ago? It's because a lot of stuff builds on itself, you know, builds on other topics. And so when we understand the reason for our actions, it increases our ability to concentrate on like the task, what we're doing, if that makes sense. Um, and so getting into a more technical side of maintaining that balance, it's really like good to not not have yourself on a completely set schedule, because that kind of sets you up for, you know, unrealistic expectations if you go over, you know. But it's good to have like a rough outline um of what your schedule is going to look like and kind of work within it and around it. So daily planners are good. So if you, during Welcome Week and during Connect Fest, the Office of Student Engagement had a promotion where you could text CCBC to 71444 and you would get a free daily planner. And so it's like things like that, utilizing things like that, or buying one on Amazon, or getting one at Office Max, or using a digital version like Google Calendar. If you're more, if you want to go paperless, um, using sticky notes. I can't even tell you how many sticky notes I have just scattered around my desk because yeah, I do forget, and it really is helpful because I'm like, oh, I need to do that today. Oh, got to put that on the back burner for a little bit. It's it what it really is finding what works for you. There's no one set thing that applies to everybody. So you could have a goal setting journal. A lot of people do like bullet journals and they, write in like their goals and then like what they did that day. You could have a to-do list. And last but not least is blocking out time for self-care. Because we really want to stress that, if you're not taking care of yourself, it's you're really not um, it's not really conducive for long-term success. So if you're going until November and you didn't hang out with anybody, didn't sleep, getting 5 hours of it a night, eating minimally, that's maybe not the best. So you have to kind of block out these times where you're just helping yourself pretty much, and that's insanely crucial. It's really helpful, and it will really contribute to lasting effects, and then eventually graduation or certificate or transferring, whatever your goals may be. And that is intensely crucial in maintaining the whole balance of it all. And so this is something more on like the study side. And this is something called the Pomodoro technique. I learned this in one of my classes at UMBC that I'm taking right now. And it's really, really interesting. And so you take a single task to focus on, or, study topic, and then you set a timer and work straight through for 25 minutes, right? So you're like, okay, this is manageable, 25 minutes. Take a 5-minute productive break. So that could be, productive break could be like, getting some water, walking outside, you know, um, or really to rephrase it, whatever's productive for you, you know. So walking your dog, you know, getting something to eat, just listening to music, watching a funny TikTok, whatever it works. Um, and then repeat that for 4 rounds. So that'll be 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. So that's 2 hours if I can do math. And then you take a longer break at the end of that 2 hours for 30 minutes unobstructed, just to, like a mental cleanse. You're all good and you feel pretty good about it. And then you go back if you want, to repeat the process. And that really has shown that it is very uh, conducive to better study techniques. It really helps you retain information better and comprehension. It really does help. Um, and so more along like a study cycle, um, previewing before class. And so you could skim the chapter, note headings, highlight keywords, come up with questions you want to ask in class. So you're like reading over and you're like, oh crap, I didn't really understand this. I need to ask my professor about this. Attending class, you know, this, I know it sounds mundane, but it really is important to go to class. If, you know, if um, active participation, taking notes, asking questions, participating in group sections, you know, maybe talking to the professor after class or going to office hours, um, and then reviewing after class. Extremely important. As soon as you can, I mean, unless you have another class afterwards, but read the notes you took and then fill in the gaps in your notes. And you're like, oh, I didn't get a chance to write all that down. So you can confer with a friend. You can be like, hey, what did he say on this page, or she say, or they say, and then you can talk to them, or maybe your professor records their lectures, for longer classes. You can go back and be like, oh, okay, this is making sense. I can really understand this. And then just this whole constant cycle of repetition, you know, it really is key because it becomes second nature to you, you know. Um, Cramming all into last day, night before sort of thing, you know, it it really does, affect how you perform on the exam, and then it affects immediately after when you're like, oh, I didn't know what I was thinking, I didn't understand any of the questions on it, and then you kind of gotta come back and be like, next time will be a little better. I'll give myself grace, be more mindful of like, okay, maybe studying 2 days before wasn't the best. Maybe I got to study a week or even just more consistently. But, the best thing is to not be, your own worst, critic, you know, because that's not going to help. You want to be, you know, in it. So, and really the only way you can be in it is if, you know, you're you're being nice to yourself and being, your own best advocate rather than critic, if that makes sense. And then finally, you can assess your learning. And so periodically, you can ask yourself if your study methods are effective and are you understanding the material well enough to teach it to others. So, kind of have a breakdown. I mean, if you're, studying and you have the TV on and you got music on and you got your phone on, maybe that's not the best way. Or maybe it does work. Everyone's different. But, the best part is you have to be kind of like really honest and look in your own backyard and be like, maybe I do take it a little bit lackadaisically. Maybe I could mute the TV, just have it on, as like background light. I could lower the music, kind of reassess, but as I said, everyone's different. So whatever works for you works for you. And so again, a lot of times, our mental health, especially during the semester, takes a backseat. So it's really good and crucial and essential to make, oh, that's a typo, to take the time to relax and practice self-care before you feel burnt out. Because when you feel burnt out, you're like, oh my gosh, this is like, I don't see how I could go and complete this class because it feels like too much, you know, and prioritizing sleep is really crucial. Young adults or just adults of any age need at least 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night. Some people work really great on 6 hours. Some people need 8. Some people need 10. It all depends on what works for you, and that's really the key of this whole takeaway uh, of this leadership lunch is whatever works for you. You know, so it's good to drink lots of water. the average adult needs around 80 ounces of water per day. And that's a lot of water. And on days when you don't drink a lot of water, you can really kind of feel, how maybe, um, not as, um, not as aware, or like maybe your concentration is bad. But I mean, your body needs water to really, sustain yourself, and it's really important. And eating regular meals. Um, and you can't retain as much information if you're hungry, because your body is trying to, you know conserve nutrients. So like you're not really like forging, you're not really retaining the information as well, because your body's busy doing something else. So it's good to keep yourself not hungry. And then it's good to reach out to your support system regularly, not just when it's really bad, you know? So that could be friends, family members, a therapist, just people in your class, just be like, it's keep it kind of going. And then walking or moving regularly is is very important. And so essentially mastering time management. So by organizing your time, you're kind of training yourself to follow the habits that you've established until they become, like I said earlier, second nature, until it's like it becomes part of your routine. It's not like a drag that you have to go and study. It's like, oh, I'm just going to go study because it's part of your day, and sticking to your schedule no longer really demands a lot of willpower, and that you've made studying a consistent part of your daily routine. It's not like, as I said earlier, like 2 days before, night before, day of sort of thing. It's like an ongoing process. And so this gives you the flexibility to adapt and keep up with your work when unexpected things arise. So if you're not, staying consistent, you know, um, and then something does happen, you're not, and if you weren't staying consistent, then like all of that work up to that point, you're not relearning, you're just like continuing on, if that makes sense. Um, as a result, you will feel less fatigued, less burnt out, and less overwhelmed, you know. So, and you can stay more in control compared to, people around you. You have a level, clear head, And some final tips is to create a consistent routine, set aside time each day to study for everything, and repetition is key to learning. You want to make sure you have enough time to preview material before class, and then enough time to review it after class. Um, and it's really important, to switch between subjects frequently instead of just focusing on one, because that's when burnout occurs. You're like, I've been working on, you know, bio for 6 hours, and you've just been rereading the same sentence for the past 10 minutes, and you're like, oh my gosh. But it's good if you break it up. You're like, okay, this subject, and you really need to include a lot of time for exercise, relaxation, entertainment, self-care, and enough sleep that you can function, and that's beneficial for you. And really identify the study hours that suit you the best and stick to them. So like some people are complete night owls and they study at 3, 4 in the morning. If that works for you and you're, getting enough sleep and you're going to class, by all means do it. If you want to wake up super early, like if you want to wake up at 4 and do it before class, and then do it then, go right ahead, you know? So it's really just about finding really what works for you, you know? Um, and that's pretty much the gist of it. And thank you guys so much for attending. Did you guys have any questions?